Raleigh again is in North Carolina, a more affordable state. It's going to have decent weather for most of the year. It's got like North Carolina has a ton of outdoor activities. It's a very beautiful state nature-wise. It also has, if you've heard of the Research Triangle, it's got a lot of like big name universities there. So it could definitely be attractive um, to people who are very interested and place a big priority on education and research opportunities there.
Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsuranceRisk.com. Today, my guest is Jaime Seale. Jaime is a content writer at Clever Real Estate, the leading real estate education platform for home buyers, sellers, and investors. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Jaime Seale about the best and worst places to live in 2024, according to Americans. But first, a quick reminder. If you like our show, CREPN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how attractive our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network on YouTube. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Jaime Seale. Welcome to CREPN Radio.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm delighted to have you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I am a content and data writer at Clever Real Estate. I've been here about 3 years, writing a lot about real estate, personal finance, and some other fun studies like this one in between.
Got it. And you, I think you said, you're located in Dallas, Texas? Is that where you're?
Yes, I'm based in Dallas. Been here about 4 years.
Got it. Got it. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this survey and kind of its findings. And one of the things I was just kind of looking through here. So the survey size, if I remember correctly, I think I saw this was 1,000 people. Is that correct?
Yep, 1,000 people.
Okay. How how did you, how did the respondents, how were they selected, or was there any kind of method to choosing who, where did you find these people?
Right. So our sample size is 1,000 American adults. So they're spread throughout the United States, ages 18 plus, and they have all agreed um, to sign up and take surveys through our survey platform, which is Pullfish. So we do have people from across the US, many different ages and generations, diversity and men versus women and working demographics. So hopefully it's a little snapshot of what the US is really like.
Yeah, no, that would be the hope. As far as the spread of the participants, was there any kind of uh, was there an attempt or was there, I guess trying to make certain you had representation from each state or geography, or, was there a concentration? I'm just kind of curious on the spread because the reason why I'm asking it, I'm wondering, I feel like having grown up in the Midwest, there was always like a predisposition where people that hadn't lived there had some sort of an attitude about it, whereas people that lived there thought it was a great place. And I'm just kind of curious on the spread of the people that participated.
Yeah, that's a great question, a great point. Um, Obviously, we are going to have more respondents from the bigger states. We get a lot from California, Texas, Florida, New York, like the big four. But we do have respondents from all over the US. The percentage from, say, Missouri just might be a little smaller than those from California. So they are represented, but I think you're absolutely right in that what we found is that people do tend to like where they live, and you're going to find people um, from some of the bigger cities. They're like, oh, I would never want to live in the South, like Alabama or Mississippi. But the people there tend to like it, and they say that they would never want to live in a bigger city like New York or Los Angeles.
Right. No, and that was kind of my experience was recognizing that, I can remember as a kid, back when I was a kid, that I grew up in Kansas City, and I remember the Kansas City Royals were a regular playoff team, and the way they were portrayed against the mighty New York Yankees, was always like these little town, these cowtown, kind of thing in Kansas City, and I feel like a lot of Midwesterners kind of took, uh, they didn't exactly care for that portrayal of them, or you hear about flyover country or whatever kind of thing, and so it resonated. And I just know a lot of people that live there that feel kind of they're very proud of where they live, kind of thing. So I was kind of curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, fun fact, I'm also from Missouri. I'm from Joplin, the Joplin area. So
Oh,
I definitely, yeah, I'm living in a small town and a big city. I definitely realize there are, definitely advantages to both. It just kind of depends on what your preference is.
sure, sure. Well, fellow Midwesterner there, you understand. So let's talk about kind of what, some of the findings in the survey. I see one of the questions was what makes a place desirable or undesirable to live. Um, can you can you cite or tell a little bit about what you found there?
Yeah, the most desirable places to live have a low crime rate, low living costs, which include housing, good weather, low taxes, and lots of amenities and things to do. And all of these were cited by at least 50% of respondents, so about half of Americans. And I think that seeing this list, it makes sense to most people, but then when you ask someone where they want to live, it's not exactly like in these places, if that makes sense. So like, um, people will say they want to live in a place that has low living costs, but they'll say like the most desirable city is Honolulu, which is beautiful, but very expensive. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, no, that's exactly kind of one of the things as I was kind of cruising through this, I recognized that, the like natural beauty being a one of the criteria, and good weather. Um, those are raise my hand. I'm in. Those are good things, and then low cost. Yeah, even better. But then as I back away and I kind of look at the map and go like, okay, these are great places. I'm curious as to where those three align, where you get the low cost of living, and that as far, and I guess we'll get into that a little bit here more with your survey here, but it was funny when you have the criteria that people want, but you know, uh, are they able to achieve it, or is there more of what are they willing to settle for? I guess is kind of the thing. Did you find kind of the contradiction there as far as like what they wanted versus where they were willing to I don't mean settle for, but the reality where they ended up?
Right. And so I think that a lot of these people want to move to these more desirable locations in their mind. Again, desirability is dependent upon each person and what they want. But a lot of Americans can't afford it. We saw that half say they can't afford to a more desirable location. So they are kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but they have to. I mean, finances are a real consideration for Americans when they're deciding where to live. But I think that a lot of places are great. They're just a little bit more under the radar. Like we all know Los Angeles has a lot of things to do, but it's very expensive. Whereas we found that one of the most underrated cities in the US is Charlotte, which also has a lot of things to do. It's near the beach, got like up and coming amenities, and it's going to be at a fraction of the cost compared to LA.
Yeah, that's a neat finding there. Um, so in the list of most desirable cities, um, I'm showing here number five. Well, let's just kind of go from the 10 to number one. Uh, Number 10 was Miami, is that right?
Hmm?
And then it looks like there's three cities in the top 10 that are in Florida. You've got Las Vegas, Nevada is number nine. That one surprised me. Any
Yeah,
kind of
it's it's
sense on that one?
it's an interesting choice. All I can say is that there's a lot of things to do there. It's gonna be warm most of the year, maybe a little too warm for some people. Um, but yeah, sometimes we get these and we're kind of surprised, and other times we get them and we're like, that makes sense. So I think Las Vegas is a little bit of a dark horse here, but that's what Americans say.
Well, and I can see, if you've had a fun time there, say you were there for a weekend or, a week or whatever, and you were entertained, that could like really resonate with there's I know there's a lot of people I know will go down there for golf and gambling or, kind of thing. And I get that, but I don't know how much um of a thought occurs to this would be great if it was every day like this. If you're on vacation every day, I could say, yeah, I want to be on vacation every day. But let's see, number eight, Denver, Colorado. I get that loud and clear. I mean, it's got mountains, lots of outdoor activities. It's a beautiful place. And from everything I gather, it's growing like a weed, uh, just with, lots of influx. But I would think that the cost, from what I gather, it's also as you get growth, you get ramp up of cost of living. Um, is there any surprise there with Denver for you?
No, this one is one that I think made sense. Like you said, there's lots of things to do. It's right by the mountains, lots of outdoor activities, but it is becoming more expensive. That said, it is going to be a little bit more affordable than some of like the major metros in the US, like Seattle, New York, Los Angeles. I keep bringing those up. But they're definitely the most expensive. And though Denver is expensive, it's not at that level yet. So it offers a little bit more affordability than some of those other metros with a lot of the same amenities.
Well, if I'm looking at this and understanding the map here, pretty much is Denver the furthest north on the top 10? Looks like everything else is a few latitudes
Yeah,
south
sure
of
looks
that.
like it.
Yeah. So 7, you've got Atlanta. Any sense of, I mean, Atlanta is 7, Raleigh, North Carolina is 6, Orlando, Florida, 5. I mean, those I've never been to Raleigh, North Carolina, but I know that Orlando and Atlanta are pretty sizable cities with plenty of entertainment opportunities and major airports. Um, can you provide any insight on Raleigh as far as what's the how that one fits on the
Yeah,
list?
Raleigh again is in North Carolina, a more affordable state. It's going to have decent weather for most of the year. It's got like North Carolina has a ton of outdoor activities. It's very beautiful state nature-wise. It also has, if you've heard of the Research Triangle, it's got a lot of like big name universities there. So it could definitely be attractive um, to people who are very interested and place a big priority on education and research opportunities there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So the top 4, number 4 is Nashville, Tennessee. Um, I've never been there, but I've always been curious and heard great things. Obviously, with the music industry is there. Um, what uh, what are your insights on Nashville?
Yeah, like you said, lots of things to do. The music industry is a big draw, especially for young people. There's lots of honky tonks, you know, late night entertainment options. So that's going to be popular among young people. Again, it's growing a lot. It's becoming more expensive, but it still is a little bit more affordable than some of the other major metro areas. Um, nice weather most of the year. It's warm, and again, there's a big like research presence with Vanderbilt University there. So in a sense, it's a little bit of a college town, and like the healthcare options are really great there.
No, that would add up to a good thing. Uh, this number 3, I I would not have guessed, nor I mean, I don't even know exactly where this is. Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Yeah,
Um, tell me tell me what that one what scores high for Virginia Beach, Virginia.
this is a little bit of a surprise to us as well. But we've done this survey 2 or 3 times now, and it always ranks highly. And personally, our thought is that it's got beach in the name, so people see beach and they're like, "Oh, it must be great. They want to live by the ocean and the beach." I have also personally never been there, so I can't speak to some of its other attributes, but I think that the beach really gets a lot of people.
Sure. Number 2, Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, I think I've driven through it. Um, and I'm trying to remember. I think there's a river and fairly significant downtown. I think there's a fair amount of banking that's in Charlotte, North Carolina. But beyond that, I'm not aware much. What are the insights you can provide on Charlotte?
Yeah, I think Charlotte is an interesting choice for number 2. Like I mentioned earlier, it is the most underrated city in America, according to our survey. So even though it might not seem like an obvious choice for number 2, like there must be something great there that people really enjoy, or else it wouldn't be considered, so underrated. But I think it's really on the rise because of its low cost of living, and it is getting a lot more amenities and attractions. There's, professional football, there's breweries, there's nearby beaches within a few hours. Um, and again, it's probably close to a lot of other nice outdoor, hiking trails, and it's going to be a cheaper place to live than some of the other major metro areas.
Got it. And the number one place, most desirable place to live, you're showing is Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, I think this one makes a lot of sense at number one. It's right by the beach. It's compared to other cities in Florida, it's got lower home prices than Orlando and Miami. So that's a great place to settle down. Florida as a state has no income tax, so you're going to have a lighter tax burden if you live there. Um, it's got the same um, like sunny weather as California, but a lot less expensive. So I think Tampa checks a lot of boxes for what people said make a place desirable.
Yeah, at least for 9 months of the year. Summer's a little hot,
Yeah.
but that's good. So now I want to touch on the least desirable. Probably should have done this in reverse here. Um, Gone least desirable to most desirable, but we'll continue as we're going here. So the least desirable. This is interesting. Starting at number 10, Buffalo, New York. I'm trying to figure is that a weather related thing, do you think? I mean, I don't know what I can't think of on the scale of things that are important. If we said what do we say? Crime is an issue, cost of living, taxes, uh, infrastructure, weather, traffic. Um, any insight on how Buffalo is in the least desirable?
Yeah, my take on this is it's weather related. It's also, I think maybe it has something to do with infrastructure. It was kind of like a Rust Belt, like industrial city, and as that industry declines, some of the infrastructure can just start to decay and just frankly look ugly. And we found that 58% of Americans find that decaying industrial infrastructure makes a place undesirable to live. So that's my take on Buffalo. But other than that, it is definitely one of the most affordable places to live, not just in New York, but we found in the entire US.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, it's a little off the beaten path. It's certainly not New York City, uh, kind of a hustle bustle. It's more of a manageable metro area there. Um, Now this is an interesting one. So I'm looking on the least desirable cities to live. I've got number 9, but it also shows up as on the most desirable cities to live as number 7. How did Atlanta, Georgia earn the distinction of being the least desirable and the most desirable?
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about the studies is people are going to have differing opinions about the same city. Some people might love it, some people might hate it. I guess in this instance, people like Atlanta a little bit more than they hate it, but I'm trying to think of things that might turn people off from Atlanta. The traffic I can think of is maybe a big one. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting. It's what people prioritize.
Oh, interesting. I'll go through a few of these. Got Birmingham, Alabama is 8. Baltimore, Maryland is 7. Los Angeles, we've talked about. Los Angeles is number 6. Detroit at 5. Um, any insight into Detroit being number
Yeah.
5?
Unfortunately, Detroit gets a bad rap. Um, it has a history of just, again, decaying infrastructure with the loss of um,
Yeah.
industrial industries. It's got a lot of crime. So I think Detroit ranks first for like rape, and second for murder and aggravated assault. So that's going to scare people off. But I don't want to hate on Detroit. I know that the city has made lots of strides in trying to turn things around, like revitalization. But the its bad reputation is going to take some time to turn around and get people to realize that, or I guess to recognize the changes that are being made.
Right. No, I'm kind of the mindset of there's a lot of effort going into investing in infrastructure and other things. Although I think not too far back there was a fair amount of press about water, and I think there was a Roger and Me movie, and other things that have cited the lack of infrastructure or the decaying infrastructure there. So that makes sense. Um, let's see, we got Chicago at 4, San Francisco, California at number 3. Um, any insight on how that got to be?
Yeah, San Francisco is very expensive, which people have said that they don't want to live in a place that's very expensive. San Francisco is probably one of the most expensive places in the US. Um, Housing costs again are going to be astronomical, and just recently in the news, I think over the weekend there was a shooting there. So all of those things combine to turn people off. And again, this
Sure.
could again be one of those things that we talked about early on about how, you know, people from smaller towns, maybe the Midwest, San Francisco is, very urban, and that could just alone turn people off.
Sure. Well, it is certainly the cost of living there is greater than say a Midwest city, but you're within stone's throw of the ocean. You've got lots of culture there, and I mean there's clearly there's a lot of problems right now going on in San Francisco. I know here in Portland we've got similar issues, but interesting. I mean the cost I could see being like a primary thing, and crime like you mentioned. A lot of downtowns are suffering right now.
Mhm.
New York's number 2. Is that primarily a cost thing, or
Yeah,
what's your insight there? Cost?
I think that one's probably very similar to San Francisco, with the added strike of being cold and having bad weather, like pretty brutal winters. So kind of on top of all the things we talked about with San Francisco, like crime, expense, housing costs, plus the weather, and that's gonna that's gonna get it up there pretty high.
Got it. So in the number 1 least desirable city to live in, Washington, D.C. What what do you know? I'm trying to think of D.C. I usually think of it as like museums and politicians and that. Uh, what's the insight there for
Yeah,
D.C.?
I think Washington, D.C., not only is it expensive, but I think it does kind of carry that, um, I guess when, like you said, people think about politicians when they think of Washington, D.C., a lot of politicians don't really have a very great reputation. Um, I think people have a lot of negative feelings toward the government right now, which is even more heightened in an election year. And DC kind of represents all of that. And so I think taken together, it's going to seem like a very undesirable place to live.
Yeah, makes sense. And if I'm looking right here, you've got let's see, Buffalo, New York, Baltimore, Maryland, Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, New York, and DC is not exactly a north city, but it's north, further north than Birmingham, Alabama, or Atlanta, or these other states. But um, and I guess San Francisco, I wouldn't, I would think that's, I mean, it's north of Los Angeles, um, but at least 6 of these cities are northern cities. whereas Los Angeles is being big, Birmingham, Atlanta, and I guess I was thinking Baltimore being more. I called, or I was thinking of it more of a north, but kind of a 50-50 on the at least the north south, least desirable there. Um, let's talk a little bit about the states. Um, and what do we got here? So let's stay on the least desirable states, and then we'll go to the most desirable states. And so this one's shocked me. How does Washington show up as the number 10 least desirable state to live in?
Right. Washington has a lot of good things going for it. It's beautiful nature-wise, but I think it's probably like housing costs in like its biggest city. Seattle can be really expensive place to live, really expensive place to buy a home. So maybe that's why it ended up on here. But yeah, again, that one is kind of a surprising, a
Well, I
sur-
get if you're taking Seattle as your measuring point, that makes sense. But as far as the state, I mean, it's a big state. Uh,
right. And I think probably a lot of people don't have a lot of touch points with Washington
right.
other than Seattle.
That makes sense. Mississippi. Um, been through it. Can't tell you much about it. Um, New Jersey, Arkansas, um, Florida. It's funny. Florida's on both. This is one of those on both lists there. Texas is at number 5 least desirable. Alabama number 4. Alaska is number 3 least desirable. Um, New York number 2 and California number 1. That just it it uh it kind of makes me scratch my head because like we talked about some of the characteristics of what people want. Um, low crime. There's plenty of cities in California that are, low crime, low cost, um, you know, good weather kind of things. Uh, but it's the least desirable state to live in. I would have thought some Midwestern state would have easily taken the and just on a perception basis, not. I mean, I've lived in the Midwest, so I wouldn't have thought that, but I'm just kind of curious. Any insight into the least desirable states?
Yeah, I think this one is interesting for the fact that so many southern states are on this list when they are predominantly the ones that have um more affordable like cost of living, more affordable housing costs, generally warmer, year-round, lower tax burdens. So like people say that they want those things, but then they don't actually want to live in those places per se. And like the South does have, its issues. There's higher poverty rates, lower wages, but again, also lower living costs. So that's just that dichotomy is interesting to me.
It's funny. I didn't realize this, but the most favorable states to live in, you basically have many of the same the same states. Number 10 on the least desirable is Washington. Number 10 on the most desirable is Washington. So clearly, uh, the survey was kind of mixed on that. Um, Most desirable states, South Carolina, Colorado. We talked a little bit about Denver, Tennessee. We talked about Nashville. North Carolina here again. You talked about the research triangle. New York is a state, number 5 most desirable. Um, Interesting how it can be the uh, the least and the most. Let's see, because New York was number 2 least desirable, but number 5
Mhm.
most desirable. Um, So Hawaii 4, Texas 3, California 2, and number one. What's the number one most desirable state to live in?
It's Florida.
That's funny.
I honestly, I will say we have done the city a couple times, and California and Florida always duke it out for number one and number two. So this year, Florida came out on top.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Just well, clearly there's people have an opinion one way or another strong enough to make the list of most desirable versus least desirable.
Mhm.
So interesting. So let me ask you. So is you do these surveys and we just kind of went through the most and the least. Was there any one uh, question that was asked that you found was um, revealing or surprising with the different questions and what you found?
That's a good question. I I think a lot of these um, a lot of the results came back how we expected. It's just kind of like, one or two states that ended up in like a most or least desirable list, and we're like, oh, that's surprising. Maybe not like overall, just like that one that popped up kind of randomly, like Virginia Beach in the top three most desirable places to live. I think I think it's always interesting to see, like, you know, we think we have a pulse on what Americans think, and then they always surprise us.
Yeah. Well, and even as I'm scrolling down here a little bit in the survey here, the most underrated cities and states. Um, Again, you mentioned North Carolina, Charlotte, and Virginia Beach, uh, and number one and two. So that to me would be an interesting. I mean, I should probably put those on my travel plans because that they keep popping up as a place of desirability. Um, Austin, Texas, number three, Raleigh, North Carolina, Seattle's number seven, Buffalo, New York, 10. Um, that one's interesting. And let's
I
see
think
what. Go
the
ahead.
states down, the most underrated states are also interesting. Like Colorado is number one, which I don't know if that's underrated or not, but you have some of these down here, like West Virginia, at number nine. And like um, I think West Virginia also kind of has a bad rap of kind of being a little bit backwoods, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think West Virginia is probably a really beautiful place to to live with lots of outdoor activities. I know that that personally is on my bucket list, so it's good to see that it actually is really nice according to Americans.
Now, this is a neat question you have here. So, um, we have cities and states with the nicest residents and cities and states with the rudest residents. And let's just look at the number one for both. So the rudest residents, I don't know if that's a surprise. Um, Number one was New York City, New York, was considered to be the rudest residents. And I'm curious if that's a perception thing or if that's people have had experiences there. Any insight on that?
Yeah, I think it could be perception. Um, Also, yeah, I don't know. I think that, like we've talked about, like we're from the Midwest, people are generally very friendly, and I wouldn't say New Yorkers, I mean, I don't, maybe they're not trying to be mean, it just comes off a little abrasive to someone who's not used to that.
Right, right. On your most uh, there are cities and states with the nicest residents. Um, the state was Hawaii, but the city number one was Nashville, Tennessee. Another another win for Nashville there.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious on the survey, was there any questions about uh, like qualifying? Have people traveled there, or was it all based on just what their perceptions?
it was all based on their perceptions, but I actually really like the idea of maybe adding that next time. Like, have you been to any of these places?
Well, just from a standpoint of perceptions, I feel like a lot of times, and I put myself in there as well. It's just whatever the bias is that wherever I get my information, there's a an assumption that goes whether it's warranted or not. Uh, but I found that not necessarily hold true once I've been to a place, kind of thing. So I'm kind of curious about that. Let's see, you got states with the most pretentious residents, cities and states with the most annoying residents. Looks like New York won that one again. Um, let's see what else we got here. Craziest residents. That's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm honestly surprised Florida wasn't number one for this
yeah.
section, just because like you hear the stories of the Florida man doing wrestling a crocodile after like robbing a bank. I don't know. Like some wild
Yeah.
stories you hear on the news out of Florida.
Well, and again, number one being California, two New York, and three Florida. Um, again, states with a lot of population makes sense that they would make the list there. Best food. I would think this would be something that would be of interest to a lot of people. If you're going to go someplace, uh, you're going to eat, having something that's of interest. Um, the top three here, you got San Francisco is number three, New Orleans number two. That makes sense. And again, San Francisco too, lots and lots of culture and different cuisine. But New York, number one on
Yeah,
the food.
I think the top three you know, are like my gut says that that's right. Like lots of different cuisines here, lots of things to try that are like unique to these places. So this makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So ugliest and prettiest cities. Uh, ugliest city, you've got Detroit. Prettiest city, what do you have there for the prettiest city?
We have Denver, which again, like we talked about, like you can see the mountains from the city. Um, Lots of outdoor areas, and they do a good job, I feel like, of just making the city, um, like beautifying the city. And yeah, that one makes sense to me.
And lots of sunshine. I think that,
Lots of
you
sunshine.
know, Denver, I mean, you've got the mountains, white cap mountains, but you have that penetrating blue sky there. That's makes a lot of sense here. Worst scenery. Now, having grown up there, I get the assumption, but I can cite that Eastern Colorado is no better than Western Kansas for scenery there, flat and tumbleweeds. Because Eastern Kansas, I would say, has got some rolling hills and not quite Missouri, uh, the Ozark Mountains or anything like that, but interesting. Um, let's see here. Regions with the worst accents. Uh, what do you have there for the worst accent?
Yeah, our uh, southern accent is considered the worst. So I guess think of that southern drawl. I guess people,
Y'all,
yeah,
yeah, kind of, yeah.
yeah, people don't find that one. I think it's kind of endearing, but that's probably because I grew up hearing people talk like that.
Well, I suppose it's in the context too. If if it's an aggressive Southern accent, can be kind of off-putting. But maybe if it's an endearing accent, situation can be a little bit more inviting. Um, well, anyway, Jamie, this survey, I mean, it goes on. I'm just now I'm hit the list of you've got what do we got here? The city summary, overall best ranking. You've got the overall positive traits for the different states, 8 and 10 More than 8 in 10 Americans could be convinced to move. Uh, that's impressive. I mean, this is a pretty involved survey you have here. How long did it take you to do it?
Um, Maybe about 3 weeks from start to finish, from polling to like finish writing
Compile.
the draft.
And is that people on a, you said on a, uh, they participate in these kinds of surveys, and that's how you get the results.
Yes.
Uh, so
The
yeah,
survey
man,
ran over a couple of days,
got it,
three
got it.
days.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, people don't realize if you've ever traveled to foreign countries, I mean, how big America is in comparison, and just all the different cultures we get. Whereas, like, you go, over to Europe, and you may find a country that's barely the size of many of our states, geographically, but population density a lot more. So, um, I would encourage people to get out and visit America. It's a lot of times we feel like we have to go somewhere else rather than just, right here in our own backyard, and get some culture there. That's good. Anything we didn't, I kind of just went through your survey there. Is there anything that you would like us to talk about, or a highlight or a low light, or something that was a surprise that you would like to have, or for us to have mentioned?
Yeah, I think we hit on on the highlights, and I yeah, definitely just want to piggyback on what you said about like there's just so many great um places to see in America. You can see so many different landscapes um without having to travel abroad, and oftentimes they're just as awe-inspiring. So it's great that Americans have so many uh, like truly so many great places to live, no matter what kind of climate or like urban environment you prefer.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, Jamie, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. By day, I'm an insurance broker, and as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We look to see first if we can avoid the risk. If that's not an option, we look to see if we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. Could be your clients, survey takers, um, you know, political, weather, whatever you identify and consider to be the biggest risk. And again, for a clarification, while I'm an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Jamie Seale, what is the biggest risk?
I think I'm going to try and tie this back to the survey and our business at Clever, which is helping people buy homes. And buying homes is certainly a big risk, especially if you're doing it, if you're trying to move and doing it in a place you've you've never been to before. Taking that leap is a big financial decision. It's a lot of money. A lot of people um, go over budget on their home purchase. So that is, I think that's a risk, but it definitely has a lot of benefits as far as being able to to build wealth and having a stable place to live.
Yeah, well said. I mean, living within your means, and having some extra spendable cash where you can take advantage, or see some of these things that we mentioned. That's well said. Jamie, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Yeah, I think the best place to see more of our research and our studies is on Twitter at List with Clever. And we also have a Facebook page by the same name. And I think that's a great way to see the studies that we're publishing. We publish about 2 or 3 a month related to housing, personal finance, and then some other uh, just fun studies sprinkled in.
Got it. Well, Jaime Seale, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I've enjoyed it, learned a lot, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.